What is the narrative that you would like people to understand about peptides? And also, what do most people get wrong about them?
So for me, the big thing is I want people to have access. Like, I don't think anyone has the right to stand in the way of any of us trying things, right? There has to be some level of safety. I think we've reached that with peptides. Here's a big challenge, and this comes up a lot, is we've been programmed to think that the only way to classify something as safe is for a pharmaceutical company to run a clinical study, right? Double-blind, placebo, random controlled study, and then find out the results and then publish those results. And the trouble with that is, the scientific method that has been around for forever used to include anecdotal data as part of a legitimate way to test things, right? I'm a clinician, so I'm in the trenches every day for 20 years or whatever, seeing patients and testing things, obviously making sure I don't want to recommend anything that's not safe, but I also don't know, right? I don't know how you're going to respond to something, how someone else is going to respond to something. So I want people to try it, right? As long as it's safe, I want people to try it. And if we limit that based on, I think I can say it better this way, is I went to, this was many years ago, I gave a talk at a company about sleep. And we were talking about the botanical herb ashwagandha. Ashwagandha has been in the historical record for thousands of years, literally documented. And I said, this is a great option for people to try. Very safe. Here's a dosage range. Here's what you can expect. Can help you calm down at night, tune down your nervous system. And someone said, well, where's the study on ashwagandha? And I said, well, it's been in the historical record for thousands of years. Like, that's more proof than, getting 20 people together and saying this works or doesn't. He goes, no, we have to test it. And so that's where we are. That's the programming, is we don't feel like we can get access until someone gives us permission. And I don't understand the permission, that's confusing to me now. And I want people to know, like, we're all, complicit in that when we just sit there and be like, yeah, I can only do it if my doctor does it or if my insurance company approves it. It's like, what? Like, why are we all choosing to be mediocre? Why is that okay? And so if I could wave my wand, I want people to have access to stuff, and I think it's important for people to try stuff. That's the only way we learn. That's it.
There's no way to be healthy unless you have your life as an unfolding experiment. In the quantified self movement, they have this term called N=1, an experiment of one. And I think if we can apply that logic, Craig, to everything we do, yes, our peptide usage, the way that we experience our body and health and all aspects of the wellness pentagon, our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, our connection to a higher power. If we don't actually do the work to try the things, to put on the sweater and see if it itches, to quote Rob Wolf, like, how are we ever going to know if it works for us? I think the logic here is, and I wonder how you see it from this place. If mommy and daddy, or if big government, or if big medicine, if someone outside of myself says that something is safe, well then, I can take a big breath. I can trust it too. But what if it's not? Look what we just went through with the COVID theater, and look at the results that have come out in Q1 of 2024, where these pharmaceutical companies are being annihilated for the lockdowns and the insanity that they pushed upon people with an experimental jab, just because medicine or mommy, daddy, or big state says that something's safe. It doesn't mean it's safe at all, but there's some kind of bias that we have, Craig. There's some kind of psychological seeking that we have for safety. And if someone else tells me it's safe, well then, I don't have to use my mechanism of trust. I don't have to use my mechanism of intuition to figure out if something's safe or not. Therefore, I outsource my sovereignty completely outside of myself for life. But there's another way. I mean, there has to be another way.
Well, I think what it comes down to is, you can never get risk to zero, right? The only way you could do it, and even you really couldn't, but the only way theoretically is never to leave your house, right? Never be around other people, never expose yourself to anything in your environment. You'd have to live in a bubble. That's impossible. So if you can't get risk to zero, like, it's okay. I think what people don't appreciate, and again, making a generalization, plenty of people do, but plenty of people don't, is conflict and struggle and stress is part of the human condition. It's how we grow. We absolutely need it. And it's been very confusing. Like, I am totally fine with people choosing whatever path they want, but just let me choose my path as well. Like we can agree to disagree, but that's gone away in such a polarized world where if we're disagreeing, we're enemies, and it has to be emotional, and there's villains. It's gotten so twisted, right? And I think if we're okay with ourselves and having self-worth and forgiving ourselves and loving ourselves, then we're going to be okay presenting ourselves to the world and helping others and contributing. I think, not to get too philosophical and off this, but it ties in is when people don't value themselves, right? And they don't have self-worth and they don't have love, what they tend to project is more of a negative framework and lens of the world. And they want to be controlling, right? And what they're projecting is their inferiority or their lack of control because they want to control. And that comes from, not having, like you're saying, with families that work on having values and kids, it's not just about participating. Like that's not what life is, right? Yeah. Like you got to try and you got to fail. That's how you make progress.
The way I've learned it and how I've been teaching it in the Breathe program and in the Liberated Life community is I've really been talking about we gather, we apply, and then we embody. Now, most importantly, we want to embody, right? But the gathering is where everyone gets stuck, Craig. And I'm sure you've seen this where you may have a patient or even a movie star or like a high-powered CEO that's like, hey, doc, give me the shortcut. Give me the thing that's going to get me the results so I don't have to change my mindset or my lifestyle. It's actually going to shoot them in the foot. It's really in that N=1, that application phase of the arc of wellness that leads us to sustainable and permanent embodiment. Case in point, right? I'm very open about this. So my use of tirzepatide was something that came to me because of labs that I was getting and having chronic sleep deprivation with 2 children. It just became a lot. And like you said, I couldn't even see the finish line, let alone finish the race. And I find it quite interesting that there can be such a hard mindset against these purists in the fitness and wellness community that say things like, well, if you're doing peptides, you're cheating. If you're doing this, you're cheating. And I say to them, do you live in a house? Do you drink water? Do you buy food at a grocery store? Like, aren't you cheating as well? How many things can we justify righteousness upon before we all can just know that we're all walking each other home? We're all giving each other support when needed. How do you see that conversation unfolding? I'm sure you've been challenged around peptide use, especially by the purist community.
Oh, for sure. And not just peptide use, even into hormones, men using testosterone. It's very common. And people are like, well, I don't want to rely on anything. The reality is we all rely on lots of things all the time. And that's great. And it's also good to ask for help. Like that's being vulnerable and putting yourself out there and saying, I'm not perfect and I can't do it all on my own. And I need help is a really endearing quality. It makes you a better person and builds your character and integrity. But with peptides, for sure, there's a lot of pushback being like, this is a cheat code for you. It's not fair. Guess what? Life's not fair, right? Like never was life intended to be fair. I don't understand what's wrong with wanting to, look your best, feel your best, and perform your best, like period, right? And as long as you're not out there actively hurting someone, then let's leave each other alone and be supportive, as opposed to trying to tear each other down and have some moral value attached to what we want to do in life. Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
The morality conflict and really the morality crisis. We had a guest on the show, Scott Jackson, and he was talking about the meta crisis. Part of the meta crisis is my morality is far superior than yours. Therefore, you should believe and do what I believe and do. But just like we all have a unique thumbprint, Craig, we all have unique biochemical individuality with unique stressors in our lives. So there's no one statement, one blanket, one peptide for anyone. There's a process, man. And I think this is really a soul journey for all the patients, all the clients that you have. Is there a common thread though? Is there something where no matter if they're an athlete, an everyday mom and dad, someone like myself, like a busy entrepreneur, like lots of stress, lots of responsibility, is there a common thread when someone is even having an open mind or an open heart to peptides? Do you see a commonality there?
I think the commonality, my patients tend to be the kind of peak performers in life, wanting an edge. I think it's that. I think people who are looking for, I want to do this better, whether that's I want to be more productive at my job, I want to sleep better, I want to lose weight. People are sovereign over that, right? And it goes back to that sovereignty. They choose, they raise their hand, they say, I'm ready for more. And I think we should applaud that. I think, again, we are here to support each other. Like you said, we're here to walk each other home. Yeah. So with peptides, they've just been such an amazing tool, so safe, We see amazing results from people losing weight, getting stronger, thinking more clearly, helping with inflammation, boosting the immune system, helping with skin repair, on and on and on. I mean, I could spend the rest of this podcast telling you case study after case study. Such a positive tool, and I think that there's a common denominator. It's people raising their hand and said, I'm ready.
Yeah, I remember I was hearing Taylor Sheridan, the director of the Yellowstone series, which is, have you seen that series?
Mm-mm.
Okay, don't start because you might not want to stop. I don't watch TV. I'm not a big TV guy at all, but I watched that and I was like, wow, I actually can't stop watching this. Maybe it's my addictive personality that I get to be aware of. But anyways, he was talking on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was taking specific peptides for inflammation. So most people, Craig, think of peptides for weight loss. That's the common thinking around it. But there are other avenues about peptides that are freaking fascinating. One of them being inflammation, others longevity. What are some of the other things that fascinate you about the other branches of peptides besides just weight loss?
Yeah, I think inflammation, immune system, there's a peptide, probably the most popular and utilitarian one called BPC-157, which stands for Body Protective Compound. We've just had amazing results over the years, whether people have, they sprain their knee or they've got systemic inflammation, they've got an autoimmune disease. BPC just seems to really calm down that fire, that inflammatory fire, take the edge off. Some people it's more long lasting and some people it's less long lasting. But it's so safe. Over the years, we've administered it intravenously, subcutaneously, topically, orally. I've never seen a problem. Like it's been amazing. With the immune system, we saw a lot with COVID and viral illnesses. This peptide called thymosin alpha-1, where it modulates the immune system. So whether you have autoimmune disease, which means your immune system's overactive, or post-viral syndrome, where your immune system's overactive, thymosin alpha-1 tends to turn down the volume of that, right? And so people just feel better. We've seen a lot of immune hits from the vaccine and from COVID itself, a lot of autoimmune disease over the years. Thymosin alpha-1 has been our choice to really tame that and calm it down. It's been super impressive, super, super impressive. And then from a skin perspective, the peptide's called GHK-Cu, which stands for copper. And from, that grew up in the wound healing space. They used it in dentistry. We use it in the aesthetic space. We've used it to help, after procedures or just people looking for better skin complexion. It's a fascinating peptide and very, very safe. Over the years, we've used it intravenously, subcutaneously, topically, you name it. So, high utility, different ways to utilize it, and just tremendous safety.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Click the link if you want to watch the full episode, and I will see you in the next video.